So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first reading of the 100th year of the Poetry Society of South Carolina. This program is supported by a generous grant from the South Carolina Humanities, a not-for-profit organization inspiring, engaging, and enriching South Carolinians with programs on literature, history, culture, and heritage. I'm Jim Lundy, the president of the Poetry Society. We are the oldest state poetry society in the country. And in our 100 years of existence, we've been through a lot. The Great Depression drastically eroded membership levels. World War II took us out of commission for 3 whole years, during which only the spring forum meetings took place. In recent years, we've been threatened by an increasingly active hurricane season and other severe weather. What we could not have predicted last year when we were planning our various 100th anniversary celebrations was a worldwide pandemic that would make it impossible to meet in person. But just as in the past, we've risen to the occasion and found a way to keep going. This is the 681st meeting of the Poetry Society, counting only normal monthly meetings such as this one. At those meetings, generations of Poetry Society members and guests have seen just about everything. Big name poets like Robert Frost, Carl Sandburg, Edna St. Vincent Millay, John Crow Ransom, the list goes on and on. There have been minor poets as well that you've never heard of. Tonight's program will play out just like the 680 that came before it. However, this is a historic first. This is the first time that a Poetry Society of South Carolina meeting has been available live to anybody in the world with an internet connection. This is the very first virtual meeting, and all of you joining us tonight are part of this historic event. This is the culmination of a lot of work, some worry, and planning on the part of our dedicated all-volunteer board. If there are hiccups tonight, please bear with us. These are uncharted waters. We do this for you, but we also could not do this without you. Now that we're officially kicking off our calendar year, this is a great time for you to join or renew your membership with the Poetry Society of South Carolina. If you haven't already done so, you can join online or through the mail. You will find instructions and much more on our website, poetrysocietysc.org. Now, I would like to introduce Derek Berry, a valued member of our board. He does this from Aiken, South Carolina, a geographical distinction that is getting to mean less and less in the era of Zoom meetings. Derek Berry is a poet, novelist, editor, critic, podcast host, literary organizer, and creative consultant. If all goes right, Derek Berry will be the next face you see.
Hello, hi, I'm delighted to introduce Yvette Murray. Can everyone see me? Cool. Our opening poet this evening is Yvette R. Murray. She is one of the brilliant poets Charleston has to offer, and she makes Charleston and South Carolina a particularly vibrant place for poetry. She's also a fiction writer, so she's very versatile. She received her BA in English from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh and has been published widely in venues such as Fall Lines, Zingara Poetry Review, the Pettigrew Review, Catfish Stew, Genesis Science Fiction, and elsewhere. In the literary world, it's really important to cultivate a community. That's something that we are doing tonight, and to uplift each other and to have each other's backs. I've had the good fortune to share space with Yvette in journals and on stages, and she is exactly the kind of poet that you want in your corner. She is the kind of person who, when she is involved in a publication or an organization, that's exactly where you want to be, if only so you can get a little bit of warmth, a little bit of glint of light from her shine. She is a poet who offers a lot of introspection, maybe an after reading beer, and a kind word. And I love particularly the poems that Yvette has written about Charleston, which is a city that I also love, but through her poems, I get to see them in this new way. She's a cartographer of the past, and she shows us where the hurt lives and where the joy resides, and all of these spaces where we might cultivate celebration. So thank you so much for coming to celebrate tonight and to celebrate poetry. Yvette's also working on her first collection in poetry and a children's book, so we're all super excited to see that once it comes out. And thank you all for coming onto this online space for this Zoom reading. You know, we're not sipping on free wine or stealing entire like platters of brie to take back to our apartments, but we are still here and we are together, so we can feel and think deeply through poetry. Without further ado, let's welcome our opening reader, Yvette R. Murray.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, everyone. I am so happy to see everyone here. I'm so happy that poetry is back. This is a great, great day. I don't know about you guys, but I miss poetry. I miss hearing readings. I miss, of course, drinking lots of free wine and eating cheese, but notwithstanding, it's the words that we miss, sharing people's hearts that we miss. And I am so glad that we have this opportunity today, and I appreciate everybody for being here. One of the things that I also miss living in Charleston at this time is the neighborhood that I grew up in, playing in the street, kickball, all the great things that we had growing up. So I would invite you, as we look at these first few poems, to think about what you remember the most, what you miss the most. It might not be the exact same experiences as I had, but it's the very same feeling of what we miss and what we remember and what we love the most. Line Street. I grew up in an enchanted urban forest, an ecosystem fantastic. Corner stores, candy ladies in dirt, grandmothers with eyes all over their bodies, a yad man, fush man, and the woman who did hair in her kitchen. Now, in this kingdom, there were no rulers, only magnificent energies of one purpose. Let us birth the kings and queens, grandchildren of bondage, watering little sprouts with love, scolding as if the two were one. Some with less, some with more. Enough was always enough there. Working men eating lunch on your stoop, cashiers strutting to the second shift at Edwards, and the flow of Friday 5 o'clock laughter over a plate of hot fried fush and a cold one. Hush now, I must tell it right. The ghosts are listening still in the silence of rusty locks. I etch stone tablets because those at the bottom of the mountain bask in a lovely unknown. Homage. In the middle of any night, one Jimmy Choo stiletto lies on the floor. Rain pours against 12-story windows. The soiree is over and passion complete. A misplaced corporate girl tosses like flotsam. Against the background of snoring and Egyptian cotton sheets, this nightmare rages. Her footprints as they vanish from palmetto-lined streets. Spray from the Atlantic drying on her pecan brown skin. A flavor she can hardly recall, ingredients forgotten. Many magnolia-scented seasons have gone and the impasse hovers. Stiff pillow of regret. Of this she dreams. Pickaninny braids, we used to call them. Thick knotted diadems of ancestry lay patiently on our necks. We would run around without shirts and nobody cared. And the sun would place bronze brushstrokes on our flat nipples. Tea parties, not in Boston, but Memphis and Charleston, were our social scene. Stick forks and mud pies, we knew just whom to invite. Fishnet stockings and hairs all pressed, black patent leather shoes clicking in the back pew of Mother Emanuel AME Church. You from downtown? Part 2. The borough, west side, east side, the drive. Grown wild like ivy in our mother's yards, we now drive our own fine German cars. Our fine cars down those cobblestone streets, we have grown wild and rich away from you, welcomed in fertile soil away from you. Corner stores closed, candy ladies gone. Candy ladies gone, corner stores closed. No scattered seeds can bloom a forest, not an enchanted forest can they bloom. The new sprouts dream pretty history, dreams of a pretty new history future. Who will sew up their dreams if they rip? If they rip the dreams, who will mend them now, grown wild like ivy in our mother's yards? Death of a neighborhood. Crumbling with battle, with decay of battle lost, the howls of aging wolves spread like mist across swamps from Harlem to Boston, San Francisco and Los Angeles, Nolens, Tulsa, even Baltimore. Roots of evil tramples and stomps. It seeks other moonlight. Even the genteel pearl of the South spits brimstone and blood on a blue moon. The pearl melted down into a statue of itself with feet of clay, entangled by law's skin and blindness. No longer an enchanted forest. It blinked and just let the vines crawl. My writing coach says that poetry will run into writing and run into music, and music will run into poetry. So let's see. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't never gonna fly. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't never gonna fly. If you'd only understand it, nobody wants you anywhere. So why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't never gonna fly. Blackbird, on Nina Simone's song of the same name. A dot sprouted in the universe. She wanted flight. Doubt filled her hollow bones with sand, and night kept her black wings from rising. How could there ever be enough tears for an orphaned bird still at the nest? How could fear ever make her sunrise or drip moonlight rest onto her soul? No place wanted a blackbird like this. Nowhere a hometown she could call near. A little sorrow can hold a soul back and force the brightest of lights to roam. The relationship, thank you so much, that we Southern women have with our mothers is at best complicated. That is the closest word that I can come to describe it. We all know what it is: wax, wane, in between, and everything else. So I'd like to talk about that for the next couple of pieces. Ode to the creases in my pants. Sometimes, right in the middle of board meetings, the memories hit me hard. Emotion is seconded, and my hands slide down mountain ridges created by heat and spray starch on my 100% cotton blue slacks. I grab the memories, tucking them deep within my chest. See, I feel particularly powerful when the creases in my pants are so sharp that they cut the palms of my hands. That's that sharp as a tack, that casket sharp, that conquering a world that don't want you sharp. I get that from her. Although I, in sheer defiance, rebelled like the Russian citizenry in 1917. It was actually 1975, and that teen thing told me that I don't need no creases in my pants to make it. I could raise my fist and do anything I wanted, except plow through that wall in universities or bank offices trying to get mortgages if I look like yesterday's newspaper left on a park bench. She insisted. And like all good rebellions, mine came to an end. Or I came to my orange senses. Or rather, I went back to my future. You see, generations have been wired, then in violence tuned for this moment right here. We were set apart by those who built pyramids. And she was one of the first to raise her fist by plowing through walls with creases and the magnificent, intelligent talent and wit that are in our genome. You meticulous detail of mine garner admiring looks. Sit with me at the head of any table. You open doors for me like a Southern gentleman. Your power, never ending, you put fear in its place and lock it there for more than 1,000 years. Your music. At 6, 7, and 8, all I knew was busy you and busy me together. B.J. Thomas and his raindrops, Dionne Warwick asking for directions. One thing was true. The sounds were yours. Yours to sip on, yours to jig to, yours to share. In the early of my helpless mornings, you pointed me in right directions with uniforms that were pressed just so. Homework, check. Lotion on legs, check. Sweater, check. Out the door. Now, back in that door, I simply stand in the silence of musty regret, a mind shut off from the fresh air of the present, a mind too intense to simply mourn, a mind swirling from the aftertaste of sweet, cleansing anger. My black dress is crisp, even now pressed just so. One thing is still true. The sounds were yours, yours to sip on, yours to jig to, yours to share, and you chose to share them with me. Just a couple more. Ode to the ladies in the front. It begins at the top with a certain tilt of her chin, the way her head never slips below a certain angle, how she Serengeti surveys a room, her speech crisp, tart if ever crossed, a bright smile reserved, impeccable politeness for the rest. The way she will carve a necessary path in concrete stands at the ready. It is the timbre of her drawl, the precision, the way she seems to glide an inch above ground. I sit in the back, live in her shadow, but oh, what a bright place it is. It is I for whom she reaches, I that she treats like wet clay, I that she tells the tales of her creation, Jim Crow yes ma'am survivor to whom I bow. Come back, dish your home, a bop for 2020. The problem, the elder shouted, is that louder trees speak, the less you hear. And the less you hear, fewer recipes you remember. Less you cook, more you eat dirt. Come back, dish your home. The problem, the elder whispered, has been around since a white lion, since about the time that money was money. Folk walked off plantations into another white nightmare, integrations and red lines away from rhythms that breathe underwater. Come back, dish your home. Let blood memory guide you back to purple mindscape. Then you will not eat dirt. Drink sassafras, drink strong horse tea. Be a midwife or potter, sow sweetgrass, and build strong mountains again. Come back, this your home. Phases. What if the moon is heaven, earth is hell? What if people could only go to the moon when it's full? Where do folk go during the other phases? Mars? What about the men who have stepped on heaven, driven around heaven, and came back to hell? What about the women who got close to heaven, came back to hell? What about all those people who only got close? And those of us who have done neither? I will end this evening with Ecclesiastes. All is done. Time to put the folded paper into its place. The stony stack of forevers on a dusty shelf in the triangle corner of the room we never use. Time for this smiling cover photo to join the other grinning stills, doomed to be pulled out only when passers-by stop in on their way to Florida for a cold glass of lemonade, some laughter, and a piece of pound cake. Time for the shattered clay pot that fell off of a black table to pull itself back together and begin to pour hot, fresh tea onto the earth again, even though some of the pieces are missing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you.
I wish we should have canned applause for this. We should be able to, at least, but that was a wonderful reading. And I have to say that I think that Ode to the Creases in My Pants is one of the best titles of any title I've ever heard. So I really enjoyed that. All right, well, I am introducing the woman who will introduce our poet. Danielle DeTiberis is our program chair, and this is her 7th year in that position. She teaches creative writing at the Charleston School of the Arts, and she will introduce our featured poet, Natalie. So let's turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you. Yeah, and also John just shared a link to Natalie's latest book. You know, normally we get to hang out and buy it and then have our poet sign it, but please do. Well, as soon as you hear her read, you'll want to buy the book. So, Natalie Scenters-Zapico is the author of Lima, Limón, which was a finalist for the 2020 Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award, and the Verging Cities, which won the prestigious PEN American Award, a recipient of a Ruth Lilly Fellowship and a Lannan Fellowship, and formerly on the faculty of the University of Puget Sound. She's currently an assistant professor at the University of South Florida. I first came across Natalie and her work when she was on a panel in Tampa at AWP in 2018. Remember large crowds and places? The topic was the unreliable speaker. I was already familiar with and a fan of the other poets on the panel, but what Natalie had to say about persona, truth in poetry, truth in general, and about her forthcoming work immediately impressed me and left me wanting more. That collection, Lima, Limón, was released in 2019 to critical acclaim by the likes of NPR, Publishers Weekly, Bustle, and BuzzFeed. In her review for Rumpus, Julie Marie Wade writes of Lima, Limón, Scenters-Zapico channels the voices of women who have survived domestic abuse, poverty, displacement, immigration, perpetual shame. The whole book, in fact, explores machismo and marianismo in the ways in which gender is inherited, inflicted on the psyche and the body in limiting, violent ways. In her poem, Neo Machismo, Natalie writes, "Say you're sorry that you're angry. Anger is the emotion of men. By adding sugar, lime, and salt, you can turn anger into sadness, as a good woman should. The collection is filled with acidity, as the title suggests, and is informed by the song of the same name. In an interview for the Adroit Journal, Natalie says that the song tells the story of a woman who at the age of 30 isn't married and spends her days at the window imagining the life she might have had if only a suitor had knocked on her door. Later, speaking about the song's influence on both her life and this collection, Natalie says that while some women today would laugh at a song like this and point to it as a relic of an abusive past, Lima Limón stands out in my mind because of how little things have changed. All one has to do is look at the wedding industry, the baby industry, the dating industry, to see how deeply this culture hates independent women, all while wearing a Forever 21 t-shirt that reads feminist in bright pink Barbie font. And therein lies the contradictions and commodifications of gender. I mean, part of California is on fire because of our obsession with and emotional ties to gender. These poems we get to hear tonight seek to undo and dismantle some of that harm, but with the same acidic burning. Please welcome Natalie Scenters-Zapico.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we could make this happen. I wish that, of course, that we could be together, but I'm really excited that we, get to spend the evening together this way. As well. So thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And thank you so much, Yvette, for reading with me. Your poems were amazing. And I love a woman who there's like a real attachment to her sense of home, because I'm the same way, but of course not with Charleston, but with where I'm from, which is the sister cities of El Paso, Texas, and Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico. And so it's so important that we tell the stories of our cities that are often misunderstood, right? And so that means so much to me to join you tonight. Thank you, Yvette. That was wonderful. So I'm going to read poems from my second collection, which is Lima Limón. As was said in the introduction, it's the title series that kind of wraps its way around the first section of the book, and it comes from this song that was sung regularly in my household while doing kind of housework, that basically, yes, it tells the story of this woman who at the age of 30 hasn't gotten married, and she's very sad about this. And all of the children in the song, all of the children of the neighborhood gather under her window, and they all sing like, from the lemon to the lime, you'll have no one to love you. From the lemon to the lime, you will end up single, basically like her, if you behave this way. And it was always kind of one of those songs that it has this really happy tune. So I thought it was like a really kind of fun, happy song. And it wasn't until I was older that I was like, whoa, this is what I was singing for ages. And I'm sure you have songs like that too. So I wrote this series of poems that I'm going to begin with, titled Lima Limón, after that song. Lima Limón. Infancia. I want to be the lemons in the bowl on the cover of the magazine. I want to be round, to be yellow, to be pulled from branches. I want to be wax, to be white with pith, to be bright, to be zested in the corners of a table. I want you to say my name like the word lemon. Say it like the word limón. Undress me in strands of rind. I want my saliva to be citrus. I want to corrode my husband's wedding ring. I want to be a lemon with my equator marked in black ink. Small dashes to show my shape. Pitted and convex. Azar. I lie on my back in the grass and let the weight of a man on top of me. Out of breath, he searches for a place on my body that hasn't flooded. The only dry patch left is my hair, which he uses to wipe the sweat from his face. He is disgusted because I have turned the earth beneath us damp. He says I am an experience, like standing in an irrigated grove of lemon trees. He says I am the water pooled at each trunk, infused with citrus and pesticide. He says my moisture brings mold and my body is nauseating. I wonder if I had not said his name over and over, would he still think of me as small and round and fresh as lemon, as vaginal and arched as limón? Madurez. I wear a peineta and pin a mantilla to my hair. I want to be Conchita Piquer, warning women about becoming lemons. The goal, tener alguien que me quiera. I want to be my mother singing me to sleep. A la lima y a limón, te vas quedar soltera. My grandmother hated peinetas, mantillas, and women who wore too much gold. She'd say this, pulling my hair tight into a bun. She hated peinetas and mantillas, pero la necesidad obliga. I don't want to be the woman whose skin dissolves into the caldos she makes for her dying parents. That kind of woman cries alone because she has no fat husband to make her cry in a home of her own. A la lima y al limón, tú no tienes quien te quiera. A la lima y al limón, te vas quedar soltera. Vejez. My body is a fruteria where wives send their husbands to ask for a dozen limones. I pull at the fat around my waist and unravel a plastic bag. I count each limón from the bin between my ribs and feel for the juice under thin skin. Each husband takes a piece of my body home with him in every limón, a piece of my body he can slice into quarters and squeeze into his beer. A piece of my body to press into sugar and feed to his children, laughing at the TV. What more can I give than my body in pieces to strange husbands? What more can I give than the limones that grow between my breasts? I tell each husband, "Ay limón, mi limonero, show me your list." Decrepitud. When the stranger learns I speak Spanish, he makes me stand in my underwear and read from Borges's El Aleph. And because I only want the stranger to love me, I read and wonder if Borges could help me jump through a period on the page to my death. After, the stranger whispers, "You are Lima, your tongue strips ink from pages." I wonder if the stranger imagines Lima as green or yellow, as sweet or bitter, or as a city where the snow collects on your lover's eyelashes in mid-July. Say limón, clean and ripe and bursting on your tongue. Say lemon, broken and ugly and not up to par. Say lima, rimac and rima and spoken from God. God speaks, rima rimac. God has spoken, rimac, rima, lemon, lima, limón. So I'm going to read another poem that takes its title from a group it's a narco group in Mexico that's kind of specifically known for being very violent, called Los Zetas. You might have read about them in the news, and so I was very interested in writing this poem about like what is it to be a woman living in the age of this kind of violence, so in the age of Los Zetas. In the age of Los Zetas, Saint Michael hangs demons with velvet thread and opens a torrent of tissue flames in a scene created in a box of Altoids. Saint Michael bites a cracked enamel heart, too big for his tiny plastic cleft to carry. I am in mourning in the bloodiest year of Mexican history. I stare at Saint Michael, my little automaton, and feed myself week-old bread that crumbles my teeth to dirt. I save my oral rubble to sell as earth for the burial of men. Men who only value a woman for her extra rib, that holy thing that breaks and heals without a cast. Men who want to fill my body with a clutter of spiders, eager to eat the flies that swarm my uterine lining. In the age of Los Zetas, I only take what I can carry, a reliquary of clots. All the children I failed to bear because I've been hit by men who in their thirst for me strangled a flash flood into our kitchen. Don't tell me I deserve better in the age of Los Zetas. I am blessed with a man as beautiful as Saint Michael, whose shirts I pierce, tug, and embroider with roses made from a demon's noosed velvet thread. So one of the things that we don't talk, I think, enough about with regards to a lot of women who live undocumented in this country is the number of them who are undocumented, have children who are citizens, and oftentimes they themselves will have children with men who are citizens, right? And so they're put in this really precarious situation in which when there's cases of domestic violence, right, anything with current immigration laws, they put them in a situation where they can't call anyone, right? They can't call the police, they can't report anything because then Homeland Security gets involved and puts them in detention centers, right? And so all of a sudden calling the police becomes also, aside from the violence of the police, but also becomes a question of being taken from your children, right? And being taken away from them permanently under current law. So this is my macho takes care of me good because he's a citizen de los United States. I got a stove this big, a refri this full, a mirror just to see my pretty face. He says, my name's on this license. I drive la troca so you don't have to, mija. I am a citizen de los United States. Because he's a citizen, we are muy lejos de Dios, but we love los United States. I don't wash laundry with cakes of jabonzote because my macho takes care of me good. I bring my macho Nescafe American made because he's a citizen de los United States. I ask for feria to go to a doctor and he says, Ingrata, you're not sick. I clean chiles, then rub my eyes. Siempre lloras, chillona. And he's right. I lloro sin saber por qué. I bring my macho smoke in a glass and smooth every shirt with my new electric iron. He says, no hay nadie en casa. Why wear clothes at all? So I don't. I fry chicharrones, hiss across my bare skin. Bang, bang, my macho's fists on the table. He wants más y más in his United States. I give him all of me, served on a platter from back home, plump, cracked, and ready-made. Crunch, crunch, eats my macho. You married him, says my mother, and he takes good care of you good in his United States. I grew up at the in El Paso, Juarez, at the height of femicide, which are the mass killing of women because of their gender, right? That's their crime, is their gender. And I grew up in that environment. And also I was in college during the height of the narco drug war in El Paso, Juarez. And so there's like a lot of people that came over from Juarez and started living in El Paso. And because of this sort of tension, I grew up from high school really through college age, I would say, in a really, violent, yes, but also very politically active kind of youth, very angry, kind of doing protests every single day. We were really, really into organizing. Also, when I was in college was when they put the border wall, the border wall that they always show you on the news, which is in El Paso, Juarez. It's one of the first border walls that they ever put up, right? That's what they kind of want to build, and they are building throughout the rest of the border. And it's really quite striking if you've never seen it, because El Paso, Juarez, unlike San Diego and Tijuana, it's literally was one city. It used to be one city called El Paso del Norte. And when they decided that the river would mark the border in Texas, this was one of the cities that got split in two. So when they put the border wall up, if you look at it from the mountains, like if you're hiking or whatever, you can see, I mean, it's incredible how it's like, what is that giant wall like in the middle of the city? Like, what is going on? And it's that wall. So I've been trying to write for a long time about my experiences doing that kind of activism, because it's really hard to write about it in a way that I'm always sort of questioning my own complicity, right, in this stuff. So this is the women wear surgical masks. For 3 days to mark that they've been fasting. The fast involves nothing more than a slice of bread twice a day and water. They tell each other this is a luxury, because in 10 years, the land won't know moisture, even from the well. On the 3rd day, they rise and husk corn to make a caldo de res, to break the fast later. This is their monthly mourning. They march and clouds of dirt rise from their feet. They carry children on their shoulders and hang retablos from their necks. They march as funeral procession in protest, all dressed in black. How do you explain femicide to someone who's never heard the word? The New York Times said the women look like ghosts, but I've never known breathing to be so audible. By feeding the children first, the women break the fast. No one comes to serve them and no one cries at this routine. This is an unbeautiful poem, uncrafted with sterile diction. I don't want to turn these women into an aesthetic. I have failed. That last line break shows I still want to build tension. But the pain in my feet from marching with these women, the sour taste in my mouth from wearing a surgical mask with these women as a woman, may never leave me. This poem, my failed recreation, their protest, a failed resuscitation. I'm gonna read another one from here, and then maybe I'll finish with a new one, if that's okay. So this poem is titled, You Are a Dark Body. Of water with a bed of rock barely visible from your surface. You are the only dark body of water in a desert littered with bleeding cactus. At your collarbones, you carry a gulch held up by a thread of hair. You travel days drinking only from yourself because you are this land's only dark body of water. At the crease of horizon, you find a woman in bed, her chest wet with saliva. You kick her off the bed and take her place among its sheets. A man lies down in bed next to you. He swallows your dark body of water and gives you a woman's body, a body you've never known. As a woman, you receive sores from him, and through the sores you breathe, and despite the sores, you give birth to a child stillborn for lack of water. You kick the child off the bed, but it returns in the arms of the woman whose bed you stole. You cry to be made again into a dark body of water. The man kicks you off the bed, covers you with dirt, and turns you desert. You cry for a bed he will never let you sleep in again. You cry for your body's bed of rock, turned desert for lack of water. So I'll finish with this last poem, which is a new poem that's coming out this month, I think, through the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day. So you'll see it the way it looks there soon, if you subscribe to that. You should, if you don't. This is Pledge Allegiance. I tap, tap, tap the window while my mother smiles and mouths, tranquila. I tap, tap the glass, my mother a fish I'm trying to summon. I tap until a border agent says stop, until a border agent shows me the gun on her belt. My childhood was caught on video border agents deleted every 3 months. I thought myself a movie star blowing kisses at the children selling chiclets at the bridge. My cruelty from the backseat window caught on video. Proof I am an American. The drug-sniffing dogs snapped their teeth at my mother, detained for her thick accent, a warp in her green card. My mother who mouths, tranquila. My mother's fingers dark towers on a screen for the Bio-10 scan. Isn't it fun? Says the border agent. The state takes a picture of my mother's left ear. Isn't it fun? I tap, tap, tap the glass and imagine it shatters into shiny marbles, a marble like the one I have in my pocket, the one I squeeze so hard I hope to reach its blue swirls I wish were water I could bring to my mother in a glass to be near her. Friends, Americans, countrymen, lend me your ears. But only the border agent replies, "Do you know the Pledge of Allegiance?" She points to a flag pinned on a wall. I do. So I stand and pledge to the country that says it loves me so much. It loves me so much. It wants to take my mother far away from me, far away to the place they keep all the other mothers, to sleep on rubber mats and drink from rubber hoses. Don't worry, says the border agent. We will take good care of your mommy. My mother mouths, tranquila. Her teeth, 2 rows of gold I could pawn for something shiny like the border agent's gun. Friends, Americans, countrymen, lend me your ears so I can hear my mother through bulletproof glass, so I can hear her over the roar of American cars crossing this dead river by the wave of an agent's pale hand. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Natalie. That was wonderful. I wish that that you could be at the Charleston Library Society hearing everyone clap applause for you right now. But this was, I think, there aren't too many any new things you can do with the Poetry Society. Just about everything has been done at this point, but being at a virtual meeting is, this is groundbreaking and possibly game changing. So you can put that in your resume, the very first virtual meeting of the Poetry Society. Now, from what I understand, the chat, the public chat should be opened up at this point. If anybody has questions, we can do a little short Q&A session with Natalie. If you have a question for her, just put it in the chat box. And if you don't, Natalie's also going to talk about her workshop tomorrow, which is from 10 to noon. And it's normally a paid event that's free while we're doing these virtually. So this is a really good opportunity for people to take part in that tomorrow. So, okay, I don't see a question so far, but so maybe start by talking about your workshop.
Yeah, so tomorrow I hope that some of you will join me or join us. I am really excited. Something that I get asked a lot about my work is whether I start with kind of like what I want to write about in a concrete manner or whether I just sort of write and let things flow. And I think what has been iterated a lot is that, and I agree with it, is that oftentimes if you sit down to write about something very specific, especially at the beginning of a project, you're sort of setting yourself up for failure. And I think as a poet, and so I often use a lot of techniques, kind of like surrealist writing exercises in order to access even parts of my own memory that I know, or through association that I normally wouldn't. And so, and even see stories that I know very, very well. I'm familiar with them, but see them in new and different ways and write about them in new and surprising ways for myself and hopefully for the reader as well. So tomorrow, that's what we'll be engaging with, our writing exercises to sort of like surrealist writing exercises. So we'll read some great poets, we'll talk about them, and then we'll do like 2 or 3 kind of generative writing exercises. So hopefully you can go home and have some drafts that you can then sit down and revise. And I think we might have some questions. I'm not sure. First one, how long did you list facts about limones for the book? Oh my gosh, so for a long time I did. And the problem that you have to be so careful with when you engage with a project like that is that you can really get what's, you know, the joke, right? It's like archive fever, and that you just can like go on and on and on about it. And I had to kind of whittle away a lot of it because I didn't want the book to literally be about lemons and limes. It was just more like, how can I use this metaphorically to my benefit? And so I, you know, it's always tricky to balance that. But yeah, for a long time, I sort of kept a running log, very disorganized, which is me, but a running log of things about lemons and limes. Let's see, I think this is another question. In one of the poems from Derek and one of the poems about femicide, you mentioned that you don't want to write a poem with craft when relaying a really sober truth, which is the death of these women, but that it's difficult to resist the line break and other poetic devices that might gild a poem. Can you talk a little about the relationship of these sometimes horror of a poem's content and a poem's beautiful language? How do you navigate the kind of common after reading remark, oh, that poem was beautiful, gorgeous, lovely, when the content of the poem is not meant to be beautiful, gorgeous, lovely? Yes, so this is something that I've really spent, I think in the last 2 books, it's probably going to be a concern of mine for my whole career. I'm always very kind of flipping back and forth through this. So one of the things that I think is really important to recognize is that by the act of sitting down and writing a poem, and especially revising then said poem, you are engaging in a tradition of aesthetics. And so you are engaging in a way of trying to make horror, you know, horror or violence or, you know, trauma into something that is pleasing for someone else to engage with. And that is a really difficult thing to recognize and reckon with when you are the poet doing that, right? Because that in and of itself is another form of violence that you are enacting on that person who has originally suffered that violence. And so it's one of the things that I don't have an exact answer for. The best I can do is, and I try to do it throughout both of my collections, is to, one, recognize my positionality within the books themselves to the violence, and also to recognize the failures of the poems, right? So that a reader is not able to just digest it in one way. You sort of force them to reckon with what you've hopefully also been reckoning with. And you know, it's not always a pretty way of doing that, but I think it's important, at least for my subject matter.
Well, we don't seem to have any more questions, but there is a link now up on, if you can't find the link elsewhere on our website, it should exist on our website. It's also on the newsletter, it's on the Facebook page, but it's appearing a lot of places. So if you want to be at that workshop tomorrow, there's many opportunities to find the link. And thank you so much. Thank you, Yvette. Yvette was kind of a last minute fill-in. So you did wonderfully, you know, with little advance notice. That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Natalie, for that wonderful reading. And we look forward to your workshop tomorrow. And I think also thank you for everyone who was here at this historic event. I kind of like this. might be something we can get used to. So, and it went really well too. So thank you for Charles and John for running this meeting. So it really went flawlessly. So I feel really good about this. Thank you. The start of our 100th season has just finished. So I guess if we don't see you tomorrow, then we'll see you next month at the next regular meeting. So thank you, everybody.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.